with that in mind, basarat. I mean, what can be said about basarat? You've heard from him today multiple times through some of his amazing answers during other people's talks. But basarat's presented at quite a few testing talks events, and it's because he's one of those engineers that we love to love as testers. I think when you work as a tester, there's nothing you love more than an engineer that loves testing, loves working hand in hand with testers, and not only that, but actually supports the automation, writes automation, promotes it. He's a lover of tester in an engineer's skin. So over to you, Basarat.
So this is a talk on automated web testing with Cypress. Raise your hands if you use Cypress. Cool, lots of people use it already. Raise your hands if you use Playwright. Why? Sorry, this is a joke. I love both things. I have courses on Playwright as well. You can find anything about me by just searching for my name. I have it on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn as well as on Twitter. I'm working at Pepperstone, which is a financial trading company, a Microsoft MVP for TypeScript, and a Cypress investor. But as I mentioned, I also have courses on Playwright, and I like all things. And I like Selenium as well. I'm using WebDriver.io, which isn't Selenium, which uses the WebDriver protocol still. That's like all in the same neighborhood. So if there's one takeaway that I want you to take away from this talk, that would be test behaviors, not implementation. That's sort of you mentioned in the previous talk as well that you saw, where you want to, if you have to delete a test, delete it is probably testing too much or it's testing the wrong thing. By the way, you can't see me because I'm probably going to be doing a lot of demos over here. I'm not going to be going much away from the speaker. So I have a solution for that. Here we go. Okay, now you can see me as well. That's a joke. Next thing, so I said you could take one thing. The other thing that I like, despite that, there's one more takeaway that I want you to take away, and that is that Cypress is awesome. Most of these modern testing tools are quite awesome. Even like Selenium is it's always improving. These are all designed to make our life easier. But let's go back to that topic of testing behavior and not implementation. Like this is from the React core team. Most people know of him, Dan Abramov. And while they were doing a big refactor on the React code base, moving to the Fiber reconciler, it was like, we have too much tests. These tests are making our life painful. So it happens at all levels, not just at application levels, it happens at the framework levels as well. Cool. So tests have a purpose, and the purpose is to help us find bugs that the users might experience. So document expected behavior. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about how you would want to test these behaviors. You want to pick a tool that does a lot of things for you, and as we've seen in the previous talk as well, we want something that makes it easy to isolate our application from its actors. The application, the key focus of Cypress is web applications. Most of the development nowadays is happening in web application, even though I'm personally developing a mobile app. That's another story, meet me afterwards. But if you're testing a web app, your actors are the browser that is interacting with the user, and from the user's perspective, you want to be able to act like a user would, like you would want to type keys like the user would type a key, not just send it a value. You would want to make sure that the user can see the things that you expect the user to see, not be like, is it existing in the DOM? And similarly, from the backend perspective of the browser, you want to be able to see what requests are being made to the backend, and if you want to replace any of the requests with something else, you should be able to do that. If you're testing like an idle timeout, instead of having to wait for 5 seconds, you should be able to modify the time that is running in the browser's internal clock and say, hey, 5 minutes have passed, and the user has not input anything. Do I see this alert that are you asleep? Are you still watching? Are you still on Netflix? That kind of thing. Cypress does all of these. But beyond that, again calling back to the previous talk, I swear I did not plan this. I did not look at the previous talk before I made this. Cypress is great at moving flakes. We all hate flakes, and being a snowflake person, I am definitely a snowflake, but having flakes in our test is not a good thing. And there's an architectural principle that Cypress follows that gives this flake resistance. And there's a thing in there that might be a trigger word, retry to success. Let me rephrase that, wait till success, if that helps. The core principle of the way Cypress works is this concept of command execution separation. The reason why I'm standing here is because, like I said, there are going to be lots of demos. Here's the first one. To get Cypress, it is for JavaScript. JavaScript first. I think they might have other bindings, but I doubt it. I have personally never used it, so if you're developing a JavaScript application, they're really designed for a specific use case, web application, make it very easy to test. One packet from npm Cypress and you are done. Cool. Beyond that, if you want to run Cypress in GUI mode, we will be using Cypress open command. For those that are familiar with package.json, this is what's pointing to that. And then when you want to run it in non-GUI mode, like headless within your CI, you can run Cypress run command and that will run it in headless mode. Just a random tip, unrelated to Cypress, even if you're using some other JavaScript automation testing framework, there's this npm package called concurrency, which allows you to run 2 commands simultaneously. Here we're going to start the app as well as Cypress. And then there's another command called start server and test, another npm package, which basically runs the command, then waits for some particular HTTP endpoint on the current machine to become available, and then runs the second command, which in our case is going to be headless Cypress. You're going to see examples of all of these pretty soon, so it shouldn't be too confusing. So I have the internet connected, so I'm just going to try and just run it again, see what happens. Okay, so this is going to start our app. Our app is started up on localhost 3000, and then it's run the Cypress run command. And this is when the first time you run Cypress, this is what you're going to be presented with. If you have a Cypress config, it's going to go like this. If you don't have a Cypress config, it actually has a very nice guided walkthrough system as well. But we already have it. We already have end-to-end testing configured, and that's the only thing that we're going to talk about today, because we're not talking about testing from a dev perspective. We're talking about testing from a existing app black box style testing. You choose your end-to-end testing journey. It supports all the major browsers. It supports Chrome, Firefox, everything else that speaks Chrome, which is Electron as well as Edge. It now supports WebKit as well, which is the underlying web engine within Safari. Then I'm just going to select Electron, and it's going to open up Cypress GUI to run the individual spec files that I have. As you can see, they're all coming from the Cypress.E2E folder, and over here we have this example spec. And I can actually run this, and this is the same spec that you were looking at previously, which was completely empty. And within this Cypress IDE, you can actually navigate directly to the test as well. So I can click on this, and this will open up VS Code and take us to that file. So like it has a very nice user experience, and a lot of thought has gone into designing, especially this version 10. This is pretty much a rewrite of the previous experience that you might have seen ages ago with Cypress. Let's try a simple thing. Everything is available from Cypress. One of those, these are called commands. So site.visit is a command, and we want to visit some URL. Let's go to http google.com. Should be a safe thing to do. This is being recorded. Don't disappoint me, Google. Unless Google is hacked, we should be fine. Yep, so it visits google.com. But a few interesting things are happening even at this particular point. You see the visit command, it doesn't complete till all the XHRs are completed. So it's smart enough to understand how web works and how developers, like users, interact with the web. If something is loading, it won't say that the visit is not complete and we can start doing other things. The next thing that we could potentially want to do would be something like, hey, let's type some text into this, and we can definitely do that. There's this thing called a Cypress inspector. So I click this, and then I selected this, and it's telling me, hey, if you want to get access to this particular DOM element, you could use the site.get command to get access to that. I can actually copy it from here as well. And by the way, this is a full browser, so I can use the dev tools over here as well and inspect anything within the DOM to see what kind of a test I would want to write. But anyways, I've copied that command. So let's do that next. What could we do with this? Well, we could type something in. We could type in hello. Cool. And as you'll see, that's going to work. But an interesting thing is going to happen over here. The hello keys that are getting input, they are going the way a user would enter them. They're not like, here's the new value, it's like HELLO, and you might even see autocomplete happening. I don't know if it's, yeah, you saw some like shifts happening with this. So it really interacts the way a user would interact with an application, not a robot would interact with the application. But beyond that, what else could we type? Well, we could type an enter key as well. Let's type that in. There are escape characters for escape sequences for special cases. So like enter, and now it's going to type in hello, and it's going to type in enter. And you can see that it's very reliably working. It's like I'm fairly confident in this at this point. Now it's definitely going to stop working because I said that. But yeah, let's try and click something. Let's click this song. Let's get let's make sure that the about text is present. How do you? Another part of testing is to make sure that things are there, right? So, well, what I can do, of course, I could do get result stats. Like, see, I didn't realize that. I was going to do something else. Let's do something else. I was going to do find me something that contains the text about, and then ensure that it should be visible. And you can see on the log that's being generated, all of these commands happening, and right now it's still waiting for the request to finish, and once those requests have finished, it has made sure that this particular thing should be visible, and yes, indeed it is visible. So there's a lot of flake resistance baked in, but you might not have noticed the command execution separation that I was talking about. What you can actually sort of see is that there is a command log over here, there's a visit command that was sent, there was the get command, there was the type command, followed by an assertion command. You could call it assertion separately as well, but they are essentially commands as well. Actually, all of these gets are commands as well. Gets are assertions as well. So if I were to, for example, try and get something funny over here, that is definitely not going to exist, hopefully. And it's trying to get that, and it's not finding it. That get is assertion as well. You can see the error that we get as well is an assertion error that you try to get something that doesn't exist. Cool? But let's unwind. Let's talk about that concept of command execution separation. If I were to log some stuff over here, I have autocomplete on this. Walk, start, and go back over here, middle, and then go back over here. And what you will notice is that all of those things that I talked about at the start and in middle, they've already happened. As far as you might be familiar with testing, that test has run. So underneath, it is actually still using Mocha, and I can prove that by actually hovering over the definition. You can see it is the Mocha definition of describe. So it uses Mocha, but it captures these things, statements that you put over here as commands. That is how it can run these things much more reliably because it knows your intent, not your code. So it knows the intent that you want to visit, it knows the intent that you want to get something, and then you want to type in it, and then you do something. So that gives a lot of flake resistance, automatic retries, and a lot of other benefits. That's it for this thing. Let's jump to the next. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them at this point. Cool. So with the text, so with that get and with this type, what is the question here? Yes. Yes, so the question is when I typed something over here with the try.get and then type, this where did this hello get typed? I'm sorry I didn't point that out. It was actually in this input over here. So it didn't go to, yes? Yes. Edit what word? Yep. I can understand I probably made a mistake, but we'll talk about that afterwards. But thank you for raising that. Okay, so that's the basics of using Cypress. Thank you everyone for staying, by the way. I'm really glad that Cameron hosted drinks after this as well, and that might be contributing as well. But thank you for that. Okay, let's jump into the next thing, which is, this really thing is designed to be like a workshop, and that's what the title is, a workshop. And the way we're going to do this workshop is, I'm going to present the challenge and I'm going to try and solve them, and we'll see how it will go, and we'll hopefully learn a lot more concepts about Cypress. And for that we'll do this simple to do MVC app, and the reason why I'm going with this to do MVC app because it has a very well defined spec. a lot of testing is writing the great specs. That's like most testers they understand that. So because I have this great spec, it means it makes a great candidate for testing. Let me just give you a quick demo for those that haven't seen it before. Have to exit the So this is a to-do MVC app. You can add to-dos to it. Nothing special. You can mark to-dos. You can delete to-dos. There are also further features as well, and we'll look at these features as we test them. But that's the basics of what the to-do MVC app looks like. Before we start automating, the concept that I want to cover is page objects. Raise your hand if you are already familiar with page objects. Cool. Lots of people are, so I don't need to cover it at a conceptual level. But in a sentence, it would be an API you create on top of your page to make it easy to interact with the page instead of things flying around uncontrollably. That might sound weird, so let's just look at it. So this is the to-do page object that I've created, and it has stuff like, hey, if you want to clear the backend, we'll talk about this in a bit. If you want to visit this particular URL, do that. Here are some class names that exist. If you want to get the app element, the new to-do input element, the main element, these are the selectors that we've seen, side.get main, side.get footer, all of that stuff. Cool. And we might look at more of the stuff that is within this as we try to use this page object. And one more thing that I want to cover before we start the workshop portion is that implementation versus behavior. So the to-do MVC spec that I showed, even though it is very well spec'd out, it is very much spec'd out from an implementation perspective. You can see things like it must have a parent li, you must click a label, and it must have having the .editing class. And like the editing is just like a sentence. It's not really a test behavior well-defined spec. It's like all over the place. So you can take the same stuff and then you can convert that into a nice behavior spec. You can say that, hey, starts off unchecked, clicking on this does this, like very, very action oriented, very what the user is going to be doing, clicking on the remove button and the item gets removed instead of being like, yeah, clicking on the li removes the li, hovering over the to do shows the remove button, having the to do class like that. Yeah. So behaviors much better to test. So let's write some behaviors that are executable, therefore are docs and therefore also code. Let's look at the first one from this example, and that was the second one. 0 no to do's side. So when we start off the app, the main list and footer should be hidden. Within the page, to do page, we have the main, which is side.get.main, and it should be hidden, okay? So dot should not exist, and then the footer should also not be there. So I already created a footer one as well. It's just a selector on side.get by the CSS selector dot footer. That's going to be pretty easy, but I hope it will fail if we go into the to-do. Actually, it's working. I am curious why. I actually know why, because I have the fix here already. So it has before each as well, and similar to Mocha, I do have access to the whole of the Mocha framework. So the before each was there, but what is happening is, okay, the test I wrote was bad, but nonetheless, the thing that I want to point out is that this is not a good state to start your application in, like what you did in your previous test. So one thing could be that you could use mocking. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could intercept when the browser was saying something, like you can do with Selenium? Yes, you can do that with Cypress as well. The way you would do that is you would say sci.intercept, and if there is a call, HTTP, localhost 3000, over API, over get-o, then it should return to-dos items empty array. And now you can actually see it over here when it tries to get before with it the routes. Yeah, if someone tries to get this particular URL, it's actually going to return that empty array, and that's why now you have a nice clean state that your application is in. But it's not ideal to start mocking stuff like that because there are lots of other requests that this application makes as well. So at this point you have to start re-implementing the whole of the backend in a mock version. So a better suggestion is to use something like a reset state within your backend, and that's where this clear function comes in. And what that's doing is it's making a request on the browser's behalf to set all and sending it an empty array of to-dos. Now, this is not the same as you making a request from Node.js. This request is actually going to be made from the browser. So if, for example, it was a login request and it came back with any authentication cookies, they would get set on the browser. So you could actually do site.request and make a request to your API backend that is login and give it your username and password and receive the cookies, and they would get set the same way as if there was a UI that you had in which you input the username and password and did login. So that request is made now, which is why the next fetch request that is made is coming back with an empty. By the way, I have the DevTools open over here. You can see all the requests that you normally see, like in the console over here, in the network. This is also available. I could actually open it over here as well. But this is being tracked within the Cypress command log as well, and I can click this, and this shows me like the response body for that particular thing. And of course, in this particular case, it's empty because before each we are setting it to an empty array. Cool. So that's the first spec done. The main disk footer and inherent footer should be open. Now, of course, it's not in this case. Okay, I'll just. I wanted to fix a bug in my code, but let's just move to the next step. Okay, let's try write some more tests. The input element should be focused when the page is loaded. And indeed it is. You can see right now the input element is in focus by the clicking get it. The way you get the focused element within Cypress, side.focused, like you can see it's very web oriented. Side.focused, and it should, all assertions in Cypress start with should. It has its benefits and negatives, but I didn't actually have to install TypeScript definitions for Cypress. Cypress team ships with the TypeScript definition, and all the autocomplete that I'm getting is coming from TypeScript definitions maintained by the Cypress team. So the focus element should have, now I know about my application, it should have the class, whatever the focused class is, which I don't know, but hopefully I have edited, or someone else has edited to the to-do page, .class names, .new to-do input, clearly. I could find it as well, by the way. So if I were to now run a different spec, open up the specs, go and do that, that's one way of running them. Another way of running them is to actually just have while it's running, there's a button over here to expand the specs as well, and I can easily swap between new to do and no to do's. But we're in the new to do spec right now. I could have actually easily found the class that exists on this particular element by inspecting it in the DOM as well, because I have full access to the DOM. I could actually be even live coding this app right now and have the tests open in a separate window, and like have the app, the tests, and my IDE in different windows, and yeah, show the devs. I am a dev. So I could find the class over here, and you can see that it has the class new to do. So I could actually, and that's what probably this new to do input is pointing to. So it should have that class. I've just created a nice page object on top of it, but you can write the page level. Created by enter. So when you press enter, new to do gets added. So sci dot. Actually, I have on my page object to do page dot new to do input dot type hello, and then type enter. And it should get added to the list. So on my to-do page, I also have for items, get items by index. Item has its own destructured things, and it's like you can look at the navigation if you want to. It's pretty simple. It's like get by test ID this thing, get by test ID this thing, get by test ID this thing by the index. So I can get the first to-do that exists, and I can make sure that it should have side to-do should have text. Actually should have. Let's just run this. Should have text hello, and I totally expect this to fail. Again, of course, on succeed. That's not. Yes, so it's trying to get the text, but it's actually not the text. Input set value. Actually, I'm doing something that's completely crazy. I'm using the checkbox. I mean to say item label by index. Cool. Item label by index. Labels have text, and it should have the text hello. This should pass. Now you can see there's running all the other ones as well, and that can get 9. So you can actually do dot only as well. If you're familiar with Mocha, it is real Mocha. This is not a mock Mocha. Yeah, so that happens. Expected new to do to have class new to do, because I'm still running new to do. Because why not? That is correct. Oh yeah, I'll run the focus one. Sorry, I intended to run this one. Cool. So that's passes. It's making sure that this particular, you can type into this, press enter, and then actually within this log, it has DOM snapshots of all the things as well. So you can see what the state of the application looked like when you were typing something. Then you can see once that type was completed and you pressed enter, what the DOM looked like. So you can go back and debug at any point if things start to fail. Cool. That's that. What else could we do? We could it should clear the input after adding. So if I type and press enter and then I try to get the new to do input, it should have the value of nothing. So it should clear it basically. And I'll run all of these in a sequence actually. Might as well. So that's that. That should be fine. And then prim before adding. So if I were, for example, to have lots of spaces over here and lots of spaces over here, and the text that get added should still be hello. And then yes, I'm not obsessed by Adele. I just like the word hello. It starts a conversation. Do not create it blue if the result of sublime is an empty. So if I just print spaces, then they should not even exist. So I get labeled by index 0 should not that exist. Cool. So all of these run, and yeah, all of them work. That's pretty much it. It's an interesting experience. I would maybe want on an interview it to include it as well. I don't know, but that's the spec. It passes the spec. That's the product decision. Anybody else also to product? Sorry. Let's move to the next one. Let's do one more. What are the spec for the item that gets added? Well, it should start off as unchecked. So we've added to-dos a few times. Might as well just create a utility for it within the page object. I've already done that. To do page.add to do. This is exactly what the function that you've been seeing, which is type in some text, type in enter, and it should have that value. It's actually, by the way, this is a good suggestion to have insertions as a part of your actions as well, to make sure that this is like instead of having to add a wait, you make sure that what you expected the state to be after a particular action, it exists. Although in this particular case it's really not required, but it exists. Okay, so add to do something that Adele likes, and then I actually didn't plan this to be an Adele talk, but here we are. So it starts off unchecked, so to do page. Raise your hand if you like Adele. Ah, excellent. I once went to a talk and it was all about Beyonce. I think I got inspired by that. So to do page starts off unchecked. So item, some stuff about item, get me its checkbox for the 0th index, and then it should be checked. And you can see that it's very web focused. Like checking and unchecking is a web thing. That's what the property exists on an input when it's checked, and this is an assertion based on that. So it should be checked. What else should happen? Clicking on the checkbox toggles it. So if I were to, for example, click it, then it should, yes, be unchecked. And then what else? Clicking on the remove button. Okay, so add to do. Let me just make sure that these two pass. So bring here item. Now if this was a workshop, you would all be doing this and I'd be running down and helping. But now you see me fail. So this is what it feels like. Okay, item starts up unchecked, get the new to do, hello, get item toggle, expected item toggle to be checked. Of course, it starts off unchecked, not checked. I didn't read the spec wrong, so it's like starts off unchecked, so it should be unchecked. And this should be checked. You can sort of see like the debugging experience as well, that's the whole point of this, that you can, in a workshop you can see what real life pain looks like. So, okay, it's still failing, so it should be unchecked. So let's see if yes, sure, it should not If I had used autocomplete, I would have been better. If I had done b.unchecked, it would have been like there's no unchecked. It's actually not the unchecked. I don't want to define it unchecked. Not dot checked, not be checked. I don't know what I was doing before, but cool. So that's good. Still haven't written the last one. Clicking on the remove button should remove the item. So let's add the to do, and let's try to get the remove key from it. So get items something should have like a destroy button. Destroy by index 0 and click that, and then expect do page dot item by index, item label by index 0. 0's label should no longer exist. Cool. And I'll just run this one in isolation. And it's trying to click something, and you can see it's automatically retrying that tiny progress bar that you see. I can press R actually to reload this code. That's redone. You can see that there's a timer that's happening, and like, there's a lot of work that has gone into making this UI as accessible as possible, as like convenient as possible. And it's trying to click something, and it's not finding it. It's not finding it. It's trying to actually I can make it pass. I can actually hover over the thing, and then the cross shows up, and then it clicks it immediately. Now the test passes. So how do I get that thing to appear? That's actually a DOM element. Now, the reason why you can click it, I want to point that out as well, because the user can click it. So Cypress knows that it exists. You can definitely click it. The code can definitely click it, but code is like, hey, sorry, my cursor was still at the variable pass. But the code is like, hey, the user can click it, so I'm not going to click it. No way. And actually, when the error comes, you can see that, hey, the element is not visible because it has a CSS property display none. You can take that to your devs. But I can actually make it available as well. I can actually say item this thing that I want to click, invoke show, and this is the deep integration that it has with the browser. It can actually talk to the DOM element and say like, I know your display none, but just show yourself. And now the test passes. Cool. Let's jump to one more. Okay, we keep doing this all day. So edit items. Let's see. So I'm getting tired of adding to-dos. So I can actually create a before each in the test as well. And in the test, I can add a to-do. So all of these tests will add that to-do. So I don't have to keep on copy pasting, add to-do, add to-do, add to-do, hello, hello. And all the hello is capital. So maybe I did plan this. Okay, so double clicking the to-do label activates editing mode that I can demonstrate. So even though the test is complete, I can still interact with it. It's the real browser, and this is what it's talking about. I can double click it, and now it goes into edit mode. How do I make sure? So after it, there is a to-do page dot get item by some item stuff, right? Item label by index 0, and then double click it. See, browser friendly, browser API stuff, and double click it, and then magically the edit should appear. Cool. The edit for this particular item should. Anybody want to guess what I'm going to write here? B dot. Could do exist as well. I think this will be fine. We'll find out. Next thing is the edit mode should exit on enter, blur, and escape. So that's like 3 test cases. But I actually don't mind having too much in my test cases because I'd rather have 1 test fail instead of 3 tests fail, and there's a reason for that. Because you might have seen the log that we get is quite nice. It will actually tell me at which point in this test it failed, kind of thing. That's like when tools improve, your behavior can change and adapt in the tool kind of thing. Okay, so the edit mode should exit on blur and enter and escape. So once it is here, if I were to type the enter key, then it should not exist anymore. It should go back into label only mode. And similarly, if I were to do, what is the next one? Should exit on blur. So anybody guess what command I'll call over here? Raise your hand. Let's make it worth your while. Raise your hand and answer the command that you think that will go over here for $100. So it should exit on blur. What will be the command? Blur, not on escape, on blur. Blur. Raise your hand and say it. Damn it. Okay, so nobody gets surprised right now, but it's blur. Okay, this I think you'll be able to get. So what the third is that it should also exit the edit mode if I were to type the escape key. So what will be the command over here?
Dot escape.
Type escape. What will be the command over here? Yes, you said it first. Yes, so maybe this was great. We all speakers got in a room and you were like, you get $100, so he gets $100. Thank you. Thank you for your talk as well. Like I said, I use IPM nowadays. I'm a mobile dev now. Okay, so should type, and after this, if I were to type escape, ESC, then it should no longer exist. What's the next one? Enter results in a commit. So if I were to get the item and then type into it, okay, this is going smoothly, no copy paste. So get it, double click it, and then if I were to type in this edit box some more stuff like world, so it's no longer about Adele. Oops, I don't know what I pressed, but I did, and it did something. But yeah, so if I were to type this thing and then followed by that I press the enter key, then this label that's getting created should have the new text. So the label should have text. I want to ask a question again, but the card is already gone. There's no motivation. So the text should be hello world. Cool. And blur is also in the commit as well. Very easy. Copy paste the same thing. Instead of typing, do a blur. And it should have the text. Oops. It should have the text. Actually, type something and then do a blur. That'd be better, right? So then you know that there has been an impact of the fact that you typed something. So type something, world, followed by blur, but don't press the enter key because that's not for testing. And then finally, what else? The commit is done after the trim. So if I were to, for example, add a bunch of spaces over here as well, then the text should still be hello world. And you know what? Let's run this and pray that this works. And if it doesn't, then you fix it, and that'll be good. So this is the 003. I'm going to jump over here, go to 003. It's working. It's working. It is not working. Okay, so let's isolate the one that failed. So this is the second one, the big one, the one that scares all of us, and only do this. You know what? The card might have gone to the wrong person. He might have given the wrong answer. It's his fault. So get the first item, double click it, and it should be visible and it should not exist. Let's just do that. Now, here's where another feature of Cypress is pointing out that it's very, very fast. Like, I'm not annoyed by the fact that I have to run this again. So it's trying to get this edit should not exist in the DOM, but it clearly does exist in the DOM. I guess that my test was too harsh. It was like, should not exist. It does exist, it's just not visible. So that's hopefully the issue. Actually, it's not. It's pointing out something else. It is still existing and it's still should be visible. I did that twice. I did something wrong. Yes. Okay, I'm just gonna. Yes, I understand that I haven't pressed enter. Let me just press enter. You're right. Let's just do that. I don't know. I swear I did because I copied it. I think at some point I did undo the type enter. And it should no longer exist. Cool, cool, that happened. You saw nothing. No wonder you couldn't guess type, that's my fault. Did you look at my slides beforehand? Okay, but let's do this and run it again. Hopefully everything works in the remaining 4 minutes. Cool, excellent. 4 minutes for questions.
Class is growing after 5 o'clock.
so blur does this, so it blurs it. Out of focus is called blur. So actually, if I were to do something over here, yeah, or that thing. But if I were to, this is not JavaScript programming. If I were to select this element, now I don't know, like this is really off script. Yeah, let's do that. Nobody has this question, right? Okay, so when you select an element within the DOM, you actually get a reference to this in your dev tools as $0. So this $0, which is undefined right now for some reason. The dollar? I don't know. I'm going to inspect this element actually, and actually that's what's happening. So that I need to click on this input. I'm going to check it. Anyways, it blurs it. Next question. Yes, way at the back there.
Is Cypress handle iframes?
That is an excellent question and an excellent voice. It made it all the way from back there. I think.
That's impressive.
Yes, good job. So does it have no side chains? Yes, 100% it does. If my peeps from Australia Post are here, we had a payment thingy in there that was like our own payment system, but you could use Stripe as well. The normally payment systems inject themselves in iframes, and we tested that perfectly fine, no issues. Yes?
Sometimes when you have multiple tests, the page is reloading. Is it possible, especially with third?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sometimes the question is when you have multiple.
Yeah. So it's consuming time because you have a lightweight.
Yes. So the question is, while the tests are running, the page is constantly reloading, and that's because I have this visit every single time. So if I were to remove this, and there would not be actually a visit anymore. Actually, there would be no visit, so even the first thing would not happen. But because of this visit in each thing, it's actually that's a refresh. The visit is a new visit with new URL.
Yeah. So can you solve that by having it, because it thinks it's going to localhost 3000, if you add base URL in your config, then it not overrides the default.
Oh, excellent point. And he's actually pointing, he's teaching all of us, including me. There's an option within Cypress config, which I'm definitely going to mess up right now, but there's this thing called base URL, and I could say HTTP overall localhost 3000. This is going to go very deep. This person knows his Cypress. Gives me a card, I'm joking. So if you set a base URL, and actually because of the config changes reloaded, and if I were to run, let's just run the simplest one, no to-dos. If there's only one test in this, don't run that. Run something that has multiple. Run the second one, which has multiple. You can see that there's no flicker the way there was before. And the reason is, when you visit at a particular URL, browsers will delete everything because they don't want your Google stuff to go to Facebook, because one of them is evil. I'm joking. I didn't say which one. Okay, so yeah, so you visit, so they clear that. But if you set a base URL, it's like, hey, I trust this URL. That's the one that it doesn't do a domain shift. That was the browser doing a domain shift. So set your base URL in your Cypress config. Shame. Next question, way at the back.
Cypress or Playwright?
Last question. Sorry, Cypress or Playwright? Excellent question. So I have the answer actually. I could do a joke about this as well. We are out of time. But he's actually asked me for Cypress or Playwright, and he did his own evaluation, and I love his evaluation. We've done an evaluation at our team as well that I will share the results of you with privately. But summary: if you want to build your own automation framework, Playwright is an excellent choice. It is very API oriented and developer oriented. But if you want this particular GUI and this particular experience that someone else has created for testing, use Playwright. Use Cypress.